Jane is here from not Milwaukee.
St. Louis.
I see people.
And
St. Louis. We have somebody from St. Louis.
okay.
And Kirsten, I think, is from St. Louis too, right?
She moved.
She moved.
Good to see you.
Pas déménagé.
I'm from St. Louis too.
Oh, wow.
Thank
Are you
you.
also from St. Louis, Kirsten, or no?
I'm in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Kirsten,
So we have
you're in
three,
St. Louis?
St.
three
Louis,
people.
yeah, Webster University. Webster University.
Oh, it's Kirsten. Hi.
Wrong, different Kirsten, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, Chantal. Oh, good. You have someone from California beside me.
And we have
Salut,
a lot of foodies, I see.
Yeah, good. Karen, you have two.
Hi there, I can't get my picture to show.
Ah. Ça fait rien,
Oh.
tu m'entends, tu m'entends,
There
tu
it is.
m'entends.
Ah,
Salut.
voilà, bonjour.
Okay, voilà. Okay. I was kicked out of the meeting.
Oh, non, 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 non. Salut, Chantal, tu vas bien?
Yeah, I was kicked out from my iPad, so I'm on the computer. I need to place it. Okay. Voilà. Comment va?
Ça va. Chantal is from California. She's a French professor, FYI.
Ah, bonjour.
So just wait a minute or two. But it looks like most of the people who registered are here.
Karen, you're blooming.
That's my Christmas cactus,
Oh.
but it's a picture from Christmas. It's not blooming now.
That's great.
No, it's so good to see you, Kitty.
You too.
Roger says hello.
Merci, tu me manques.
Tu me manques aussi.
By the way, for everyone, Karen was one of my editors for Minty and Minarets. Merci, Karen. En anglais.
De rien.
Version anglaise.
C'est un plaisir.
All right, well, I think we can start. And do you wanna, and if you could all, or I'm just gonna mute everyone while Kitty's talking to avoid background noise. Okay.
So bonjour, my name is Anne Laplay. I am the Executive Director of l'Alliance Française de Milwaukee, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce our good friend Kitty Morse tonight. And the Alliance Française de Milwaukee has a special connection with Kitty. Kitty's mother, Nicole Chandler, as well as her aunt, Martine Meyer, are past presidents of our organization. Our library is at the Alliance Française is dedicated to both Nicole and Martine. And Nicole Chandler, so Kitty's mother's section, is focused on cooking and traveling, thanks to a very generous donation from Kitty. Kitty is an award-winning author. She's born in Casablanca, Morocco, of a French mother and a British father. She emigrated to the United States at the age of 17. And while studying for her master's degree at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Kitty catered Moroccan banquets and went on to teach the intricacies of Moroccan cuisine nationwide. Kitty is the author of 9 cookbooks, including a memoir, and maybe that number is outdated, maybe it's more than 9 now, including a memoir with recipes titled Mint Tea and Minarets, a banquet of Moroccan memories. The book centers around Dar Zitoun, her family Riad, which is a Moroccan name for a mansion or a chateau, about 50 miles south of Casablanca. Kitty recently translated the book into French with the title Le Riad au bord de l'Oued, that was published in 2019, and both books are downloadable as ebooks on Amazon. Kitty's books have been translated into French, German, Polish, and Czech. In 1984, she initiated annual gastronomic tours to Morocco that included culinary demonstrations in her family home. And for those of you who are foodies, Moroccan cuisine is some of the best cuisine in the world.
Yes.
Yes, she initiated gastronomic tours in her family home. And she also publishes monthly e-newsletter in French and in English, and she's been doing this for about 10 years. Kitty's career as an author, travel writer, cooking teacher, and tour organizer spans several decades. Once a food columnist for the Los Angeles Times, Kitty has written for most major food publications. She hosted 2 television series of her own and has appeared on national TV in the US and abroad. And most recently, she's working on a new book. We don't want to talk about it too much. Recipes from her Alsatian ancestors. So that's something that will come soon. Based on original family documents and photographs chronicling living in Alsace during the Nazi occupation in World War II. I spent part of my confinement cleaning my office and found this wonderful menu where I attended a Moroccan feast that Kitty organized at Bartolada's Lake Park Bistro in 2003, so 17 years ago. Ooh. I have 2 Kitty's cookbooks in my kitchen that I often consult, A Biblical Feast and the Vegetarian Table, North Africa. And I also spent a couple years in Morocco, and so I definitely have very much of a special connection with Kitty. So Kitty, I will hand the mic over to you. Merci.
My goodness.
And Kitty, Kitty used to live in Milwaukee, so that's another reason to strong connection. Yeah.
So we're going to speak English, mais je lirai en français un petit peu plus tard. But anyway, Milwaukee is my American home, so that's why I'm always happy to be in touch with anybody there. Thank you for that introduction. I just thought, oh my goodness, please, did I say all this? That's the truth. So we're going to start with a few slides in no particular order, but let me give you a very brief résumé of Minty and Minarets, or Le Riad au bord de l'Oued, if you haven't had a chance to look through it. It took me 12 years to write, and but it was something I needed to do because Darzitoun is worthy of a book. My father was a British military man. He was in the Royal Air Force in 1944 when he arrived in Morocco, and spent the war there building Spitfires to send back to the European theater, you know, to use in Germany or wherever. So at that time, he met my mother. He became familiar with Morocco, and he fell in love with Morocco. This young guy, he had lied to get into the Air Force. The Air Force, he lied about his age. And I think he discovered Morocco, and he was absolutely overwhelmed, coming from a very cute and dark and rainy and dreary little English town north of London in Hertford Heath. Can you imagine? From Hertford Heath to the heart of Casablanca. So, and so he remained in Morocco for 50 years, and he founded one of the first premiere travel agencies in Morocco and opened Morocco to tourism for the English-speaking world. So he died in London, but the gist of my book is an homage to Darzitoun and to my father. He absolutely wanted to be buried in Morocco, but couldn't bring him back to Morocco. So my first chapter deals with bringing his ashes back to Morocco. I had to smuggle his ashes back to Morocco, and it was quite an adventure. And from then on, I just sort of retraced his steps and my life going back to Morocco after becoming an American. So I went back to Morocco every year with a group or not. And that's when I really started delving into the Moroccan background, the Moroccan cuisine, the Moroccan, anything that I could hang on to that said Morocco and Dar Zitoun. And so the Mint Tea and Minarets is a story of my house and my neighbors at Dar Zitoun, and especially our housekeeper, Bouchaib. I'm going to talk to him, to you about Bouchaib. And gorgeous photography. Some of them I'm going to show you here. My husband did all the food photography. So if you have questions, you might want to do it by chat or wait until the end or whatever, because I'm going to talk about the slides, have questions, do a little reading en français et en anglais. Et si vous voulez poser des questions en français, ça me dérange pas du tout. Au contraire, j'adore. So there we are. If you would like to start, Erin, or because they have control of the slides. So do I tell you when to switch slides? Is that how it's going to go?
Sure.
D'accord. OK. Vámonos. Allons-y. Zid et Michio. Let's go.
So. Oopsies. Let's try this. Okay, do you see it?
Je vois pas. Oui, d'accord. And you can still hear me. I see. You're there. Okay. So la première diapo, the first slide is Bouchaib Marzouk, whom we ended up calling La Mémoire de Dar Zitoun. Bouchaib was our caretaker for over 40 years. He appeared on the day my father purchased these ruins of Dar Zitoun. Dar Zitoun, by the way, meaning the house of the olive tree, and Riyadh in Arabic, meaning a mansion. But what my father bought in 1964 was a pile of rubble covered in guano. And I tell you, when I first stepped into Dar Zitoun, it must be in the summer of 65 or 6, because we emigrated to America in 64. I saw that and I thought my father had lost his marbles, and so did everybody else. However, you'll see the result. And Bouchaib appeared. He was a young man in Azemmour. Azemmour is a town 90 kilometers south of Casablanca. It's a very historic place where Dar Zitoun is located. And it happens to be on the banks of one of Morocco's main rivers called the Mother of Spring, La Mer du Printemps en arabe, ou Meribia. And Bouchaib was a native of Azemmour, and he climbed over the rubble. He came to my father and he said, hire me, je peux faire le nécessaire. I can do everything that's necessary. And indeed, he had been trained by a French family in Casablanca.
I don't have to listen to this, but now we have a short time to go and come back, right?
I'm sorry,
Do
I go back? Ça va? Ça marche? Yes? Okay. So he offered his services to my father and remained there for 40 years. I'll talk more about it. He was a superb cook. So many of the recipes I talk about in Mint Tea and Minarets, we tested at Dar Zitoun, Bouchaib and I. Okay, la prochaine. Cette femme est extraordinaire. Her name is Shaibia, and she died a few years back. And she is one of the Arab world's greatest painters. I mean, the boundaries go way past Morocco. She's well known all over the Middle East, and she's also a feminist. Really, she was one of the first feminists in the Arab world. You see her here in front of one of her murals. Her paintings are now hanging in the Museum of Modern Art in Paris, but Shaibia has quite a story. She was married at 14. She was very, very poor. So her parents married her off to an older man. So she was married at 14. She had a son at 15, and she was a widow at 16. She also happened to be the maid to a French family in Casablanca. And when they emigrated and left to go back to France, they gave her their house. So she used to live in the center of Casablanca. She was illiterate. She couldn't read or write. All she could do was sign her name, Shaibia. And so she's completely self-taught. And the way it happened is that her son, she was helping her son do her, when he was a bit older, when he went to the lycée, he would bring back his artwork home to do his devoir, and his mother would help him. And so she bought him, because she couldn't afford real paint. This is all house paint. And she started painting next to him. Well, needless to say, this went on and people noticed. And one day, a gallery owner from Paris came to see her son's paintings. And he saw these lying about the house and he said, "Who's this?" And her son said, "It's my mother." And the gallery owner went back to Paris, about 30 of Shaibia's toiles. So it's a very, it's not impressionistic, almost a cubic, but I mean, she's just influenced by people think or see that she has been inspired by Matisse, but she did nothing. She knew nothing about the art world. She started painting. So that's Shaibia. One of the recipes is what, yeah, on peut y aller. Si vous voulez changer, oui. I went to visit Shaibia. It's a chapter in my book. She also read hands, read palms. We had a great time. And she served me this dessert called Moul Halbia. It is a orange blossom custard, eggless, and made with orange blossom water and milk, and topped with candied almonds and pomegranates in season. It's one of Morocco's best known desserts, Moul Halbia. The origin is actually Lebanese. Really good in summer, I recommend it. Okay, next. Ça c'est mon ski. I'm going to tell you about him a bit later on. Our local medicine man in Azemmour, where the locals go to purchase potions. If you have a headache, if you have athlete's foot, if you have any kind of ailment, stomach ailment, you go see the ski, the medicine man, and he will put together the potions for you. And in a country where medicine and medical services are rather scarce and or expensive, many Moroccans rely on the ski for their medical needs. I will read a passage about the ski. He's a great guy. Next. Ça, c'est un plat le plus connu, le plus étendu au Maroc. This is called harira. And harira is the garbanzo bean, fava bean, lentil soup with which Muslims, Moroccans, break the fast of Ramadan. You've heard about Ramadan. It's past right now. The Muslim months of fasting, and every night, and so Muslims or believers fast between sunrise and sunset. And in Morocco, they say until you cannot differentiate a black thread from a white one. And when I was growing up in Casablanca, the end of Ramadan every day was the sound of sirens all over town. And we happened to live not too far from the sirens. So we knew when Ramadan was over. And every Moroccan would run home to this harira. And it's delicious, a great soup for winter, very hearty, flavored with cinnamon and saffron and ginger and turmeric and fresh herbs. I also highly recommend it. It's good for a Milwaukee winter, and it freezes very well. Française. Ce monsieur est une figure historique, and I'm going to spend a little time on Estebanico / Al-Zemmouri. In Morocco, we call this gentleman Al-Zemmouri, and in the United States, we call him Estebanico. He was a black slave who was taken to the slave market of Seville and sold on the slave market of Seville to a conquistador named Dorantes. Dorantes happened to be part of the Narvaez expedition to La Florida in 1534, 1535. So Dorantes, his boss, Christianized his name to Estebanico, Esteban, Stephen, small Stephen. And it's related. Narvaez wrote a diary, and all the facts are historical and based upon Cabeza de Vaca's diary. So Esteban, I call him Alzamuri, went over on the caravel to La Florida with the conquistadors, where they sank the ships. And there were numerous adventures, meeting the Indians, the Seminoles, it's all described. And most of the conquistadors died, except for 4, Dorantes, Castillo, Narvaez, and Estebanico. And they walked from La Florida to the Sea of Cortez, which is near me, over 9 years. And in so doing, they describe what they saw in what would become, America or the United States. And of course, they were all aboriginals, and they were taken as slaves by some of these Indians and released. And Estebanico was so striking. He was a very tall black man, Berber, and he could pick up any language in mere weeks. So of course he was put at the head of that small expedition because the conquistadors didn't want to be, mixed with the plebe, and Estebanico went ahead, and he ended up being considered as a god by many of the Indians. And anyway, my husband and I did a lot of research on that. We retraced his steps. He got to, and he and the 3 other men got to the Sea of Cortez, where they were discovered after 9 years by military soldiers from the Viceroy of Spain, taken back to Mexico City, where the Viceroy, of course, paid the conquistadors royally, but he said, I want to keep your slave. He's going to stay with me because I'm going to send him up north to discover the 7 cities of Cibola, which happened to be in New Mexico at the Zuni Pueblo. And my husband and I went to New Mexico, we took pictures, and I wrote a very long story for a magazine called Aramco World, if you get it online, with lots of pictures. So Estebanico led a small band towards the Zuni, towards what he thought were the cities of Cibola, which of course, it wasn't, it was a dream. And he was felled by an Indian arrow at the Zuni Pueblo in a nearby little spot called Hawiku. And we went to Hawiku, but the Zunis want nothing to do with Estebanico or his ilk, because they believe that he was the one who introduced or who preceded Coronado and the Sea of Blood, the rivers of blood that they caused. But it's not true. Estebanico and his 3 companions were there 1 year before Coronado. They certainly didn't create seas of blood. It's a fascinating historical fact. I mean, can you believe this guy might have left from my front door at Azemur and ends up in Zuni Pueblo, and here I am. So I felt like I was the bridge between Zuni and Casablanca and Azemur, and I wrote a very long story, and we also have a screenplay. So if you hear of Estebanico, this statue was done by a famous American painter called John Hauser, whose father helped sculpt Mount Rushmore. And Hauser stayed in Darzetoun for a good while he was sculpting a model for Estebanico, and he had found the model in the Sahara Desert, and that's another very long story, but these are the ties. Okay, la prochaine. My pal, the falconer, a Kwasam. Near Azemur, we have a tribe called the Kwasam, the falconers, who are falconers to the king. They're the only tribe who are allowed to capture falcons and trade them for the hunt. So I've been to visit them several times. You see, he's holding his falcon, and he's very popular with the Saudis, who sent 737 planes for the Kwasam and the falcons to go to Saudi Arabia to hunt with the Saudis. So yeah, so he's not very far, and it's fascinating. He put on a display of falconry for us. The falconry is very, very popular in the Arab world, especially among the people who can afford the falcons, and sending 747s from Saudi Arabia. Okay, next. Et voilà, un faucon. So we had a display with this falcon, and at the end, the falcon comes back to the Kwasam on his leather glove, and the Kwasam feeds him pigeon by the gram, because these birds cannot get too fat, they cannot get too thin. They're unbelievable. They dive at about 90 miles an hour on their prey. So he's dissecting a little bit of pigeon, and if it's too much, the Kwasam will take it away, and he'll have to wait till next time. Next. And dessert. I give 30, there are 31 chapters in Minty and Minarets, and I give 31 family memories, family recipes, all kitchen tested, believe me. This is a take on a classic Moroccan dessert called bastila au lait, milk bastila, and in Marrakesh called johara, the jewel. And what it is are layers of phyllo dough, except here I have found lumpia wrappers to be just as good, layers of fried phyllo or lumpia wrappers with another orange blossom custard, chocolate ice cream, and whipping cream, and topped with raspberries and ground almonds. It's actually very simple to make. I hope that you try it. It's stunning when people see it, and it's really quite simple to make. Next. Now, the dough I showed you before, where I said I use lumpia, it's actually in Morocco called warka. Warka means a leaf, and the leaf must be thin enough to read the newspaper through it. So it's all handmade, and I learned how to make it. I'm out of practice, don't ask me. But from this dada, a dada is a descendant of a Sudanese or Malian or a sub-Saharan slave, renowned for her culinary skills. In the royal palace, he has numerous dada. All they do is cook and teach the art of Moroccan cooking to the next generation. They're very severe and strict. You see, she's dabbing pieces of dough on a hot copper pan that is sitting over glowing coals. And so she described to me the motion. It's like the hoof prints of a camel. So you make a circle, and then you unstick it with your fingers, and she has the fingers of a guitar player. I mean, I don't know where her skin was, it was leather. And you make stacks of these warka, and you use it for phyllo, for bastila, the sweet chicken pie or other pastries. La prochaine. Inside Dar Zitoun. As I said, the house of Olive is probably 300 years old. My father bought it as a pile of ruins and spent 20 years restoring it to its original state, so that when Moroccan friends walk in, their jaw just drops, because these houses don't exist anymore. Our floor is Zilige tile, hand broken and applied tile, and the pillars are also made of Zilige. The big door is about 15 feet high, I believe. My father had artisans from Marrakesh come to paint the door in traditional motifs. But you see, there's a very tall door and a very small door within the big one. So at night, you close the big one and you open the little one if you need to go out. But originally, these doors were meant for horses. When the horses came in, you open the big door. When humans came in, you close the big door and you open the small one. And all of this is hand painted. And to the right, you don't see, but we have an indoor fountain, probably Portuguese, probably 40 or 400 years old, because Azemmour was a Portuguese and Phoenician stronghold over the centuries. La prochaine. Ça, c'est un tagine. Tagine. I always say ta, there is no N, because I once heard Oprah say, oh yeah, I love tagine. Yeah. C'est un tagine. Tagine is an exotic stew, if you would, perfect for the slow cooker, and many people must use their Instapots. I don't know anything about Instapots because I like my slow cooker. So tagines can be savory or sweet. They can be with meat or without. They can be made over the coals or in the oven or on top of your cooktop. And you see my dish here is a real tagine dish. I have forgot to include the conical lid. There's a conical lid that tops a tagine. And this one is a tagine of lamb, onion, and peppers that has simmered for a good couple of hours. And the whole point of a tagine is to serve it. You don't serve it with couscous, I mean, you can, but you serve it with crusty bread because the sauce is probably the best thing in the tagine. And this is a communal dish into which you will dip pieces of bread and suck up the sauce. So I have several tagine recipes, seafood and chicken and pigeon with almonds in Menti and Meretz. La prochaine. Voilà, so Darzitoun on the left-hand side in 1908. This is the size of the place. At that time, it was called La Maison du Pacha, the biggest house in the Medina meaning old town. And you see, they could still ford the river on donkey back. What's interesting about this is that Darzitoun survived until, let's see, 1925 or 6, around that time, when a French frigate came up the river and wanted to quell a Berber uprising because our town is a Berber town versus an Arab town. So the French frigate was sent by the government, and what did they do? They bombed our house. So what you see here is 1908. What my father bought, the whole front was in the river, but we still have the 2 upper floors. But the good thing is, after the ruins were cleared, we had a riverfront garden, the only ones in the Medina. So that's the original state that my father spent 20 years restoring. As in the next slide, why don't you show it? Voilà Darzitoun at present. And we must have been doing something. We needed a big wall. The city created a promenade in front of us. When I was going, there was mud. You had to ford the river and slop through the mat. So things have improved. And so that big building with the arch window is Darzitoun. And then next door we have neighbors. We have international neighbors, French and Italian and Germans, Americans and English. And so it's a very interesting little town. Et la prochaine, c'est la couverture de mon livre dont je vais vous parler, Mint Tea and Minarets. And I realized after I had the Minarets title that in America, minarets remain somewhat of a mystery. But okay, so mint tea is a national drink of Morocco, and minarets is the tower from which the muezzin calls to prayer 5 times a day. And this minaret that you see here is actually in Rabat, Morocco, Rabat, the capital, and it dates back to the 14th century. And look what happens to many minarets. The storks turn them into condos. So those huge nests are stork nests. Next. Et je l'ai traduit par le riad au bord de l'Oued, because what it is, it's a riad au bord de l'Oued. And believe me, there are not many riad au bord de l'Oued in Morocco because there are only 2 main rivers, and this is one of them. So this is Darzitoun in 1908, and you saw the modern rendition. C'est tout, j'ai oublié. Voilà. So I hope you enjoyed that. And do you want me to go? We're waiting until the end for questions. Is that?
Sure, and I'll try to enable the chat as well. So I'll take a look at that.
So Anne, la prochaine partie.
So I mean, I think we're all interested in hearing a little bit, maybe some excerpts from your from Mintia and Minaret, or from the French translation. But I mean, first of all, why do you think Morocco has such a fantastic cuisine? What is special about Morocco that makes its cuisine so special?
Very interesting. It's true. Actually, I once interviewed Paul Bocuse many years ago, and he said, you know, y a pas de doute. Moroccan cuisine is considered as good as the Chinese and as the French. So there's 3 cuisines in the world: the French, the Chinese, and the Moroccan. And they say, merci, Monsieur Bocuse. But the reason, it really is the best, I'm not prejudiced or anything, in North Africa, but the reason is it was never really adulterated. in Algeria, the Turks came in. And so they influenced Algerian cuisine. I'm giving you examples, especially in their pastries. Tunisia is so close to Italy, you'll find many Italian flavors in Tunisian food. But in Morocco, remains pretty pristine. And Morocco is turned towards Spain. So we have two parallel paths, if you want, of cuisine in Morocco. We have the Arab Muslim cuisine, and we have the Sephardic Jews, or the Jews of the Mediterranean. So those are two distinct cuisines, each blending their own flavors. And the point of the Moroccan cuisine, you don't want anything picante because you want to savor the blend of spices that came from all over, from the Arab world, from the when they came in and they spread Islam in 682, the Arabs brought some of the Arab spices from the Middle East. And the Spanish, when the Jews, the Sephardic Jews fled Spain at the time of the Inquisition, brought a lot of their influence to Moroccan cuisine. So it's a very interesting blend of flavors. And Morocco's at the corner, it's isolated. And it's isolated from the rest of North Africa by the Atlas Mountains. And so that creates, I mean, the culture is quite different and more insulated and more authentic. And I think that's one of the reasons the cuisine, the real flavors survive. It's also a Mediterranean country, like Southern California. So you have this cornucopia of fruits and vegetables all year round. You also have two coastlines, the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. So we have a lot of seafood, and all that gets blended into the Moroccan consciousness. And of course, couscous, the crowning dish, my favorite. I have been known to binge on couscous. It's typically North African. Couscous defines North Africa. Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, half of Libya. After that, we don't care. It's the Arab world and they eat rice. But we have couscous, and you find couscous in Mauritania. Now, there's also a long history of vegetarian food or vegetarian dishes and tagines in Morocco because meat is expensive. Poor families cannot afford meat or seafood every day, if every week, maybe for the Friday's couscous. So it's all in the imagination and the culture and the blend of flavors from really all corners of the world, even from the Americas, where the tomatoes came and the peppers came and all that stuff that got incorporated in there. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes. And as I mentioned, I lived in Morocco in the 1980s and ate a lot of just simple home cooking that wasn't as fancy as what's in the cookbooks, but it was a country that was, people didn't drink normally, but Morocco also produces wine.
Yeah.
And they produced something that called a vin gris, which was interesting. So a gray wine.
Le gris de Boulawan. It's a, oh God, I forgot the English name. Yeah. A gris de Boulawan, yeah. But yeah, it's a vine growing region. Yes, Muslims are not supposed to drink, but what's interesting, a lot of young French winemakers are coming to Morocco and reopening ancient, and of course, I forgot to mention, the French were there for 50 years. So of course the cuisine is influenced by the French, but I consider that it's really the Moroccan cuisine that influenced the French, because Moroccan cuisine is, I mean, couscous is not le plat national en France. The couscous, they call it couscous Algérien, but the Moroccan is much better than the Algerian couscous. So, yeah, but the baguette, le café au lait, la laitue, les petites salades, les desserts, les machins comme ça, c'est français. So, yeah, great blend. Casablanca is very cosmopolitan. When I first arrived to Milwaukee, I love Milwaukee, but I couldn't find cilantro and couscous. I thought my world had come to an end. My grandfather had to order couscous from New York, from the importer, up until the 70s. And no cilantro, I mean, come on. Oh, except for the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans and the Vietnamese. Okay.
And where I lived in a small town in Morocco, and you didn't go to the store to buy couscous, you would make your own couscous. And there was a lot of competition on who made the best couscous and a lot of competition about bread. Bread is amazing, and I have never had bread as delicious as in Morocco.
Khobz, because you take it to the baker. Actually, when I'm at Del Zitoun, I buy my bread from the local baker. It's 50 feet from my front door. Yes, bread is very important because traditionally you eat with the first 3 fingers of your right hand, no implements. Now you will get them when you ask for them. But so bread is a staple. And many families survive, unfortunately, on bread and mint tea, the national drink. Right? And the couscous, I mean, it's sacred food, couscous. There are many grades, D-E-S of couscous. And yes, you roll your own. Yeah, I have done that. And you let it dry in the sun on big sheets.
Would this be a good time to maybe read some of the excerpts from your book?
D'accord. I'm going to do a short one. I have it right here. Let me make it bigger. I don't want to bore you. I know that reading sometimes can get a bit boring. So, what I wanted to do is tell you about the Fki, this medicine man who is now no longer with us, but his little store is still there because when I shop out of Del Zitoun in the Medina, I go out to the new town, quote unquote, but I still shop at all my little fruit vendor, vegetable vendor, the butcher. Is there fish today? Yes. Where does it come from? And I know. So the herbalist was one of my main providers of spices. This is chapter 15, the herbalist. I hadn't expected a metaphysical experience when, on the following morning, I accepted a mission from Bushaib that took me into the realm of a Fki, an herbalist and practitioner of native medicine. He was also the patron of an exotic emporium that handled, among other things, a unique combination of spices called Ras al Hanout, top of the shop, actually top of the head, a house blend for which he had acquired a certain celebrity in and around Azemmour. Whether he could also resolve medical maladies from headaches to infertility, as many of my fellow Zamouris believed, I had my doubts. Nevertheless, our neighborhood grocer sang his praises. So did Bushaib's wife, an ardent subscriber to the philosophy of alternative medicine, who applied hot spoons to the webs of her husband's toes when he suffered from athlete's foot, and was known locally for having a calming effect on rabid animals. That's true. I never personally witnessed these bizarre ministrations, but heard about them secondhand through Bushaib's embellished accounts. Leila, his wife, regularly sought the herbalist's guidance as well as his potions in her lifelong battle against the mischievous Jnoun. Jnoun are spirits, mischievous spirits. She wasn't the only one engaged in a struggle against them. Kabira, a Berber woman who worked in our home when I was a child, both fascinated and scared my brother and me with tales of al-jinn of the Quran, supernatural creatures of free will created from smokeless fire that had the capacity to influence human affairs for good or ill, to keep one on the moral path or lead one astray. Especially frightening was the sinister sorceress of legend, creator of spiritual mayhem and caster of the evil eye, Aisha Kandisha. Among other misdeeds, she turned normally faithful husbands into philanderers. As a child, I learned not to broach the subject of Moroccan occult practices with my parents, as it only served to bring their displeasure upon Kabira for, quote, filling my head with such nonsense, end quote. They must have had a change of heart when they paid a visit to a French Fki in Marrakesh to rid Philippe, my brother, of tenacious warts. The treatment worked. On another occasion, I overheard my mother advising a friend to plant a white rose bush in her garden to improve the odds of having a baby with curly hair. Even at the tender age of 12, I had trouble reconciling the ambivalent attitude towards things beyond scientific understanding. For women with little or no education, like Kabira and Bushaib's wife, There was no such uncertainty. Jnoun manipulated their daily lives and had to be thwarted by all means possible. This belief inspired Leila to hang a stylized hand of Fatima called a khmisa on the wall of Dar Zitoun's atrium, with the absolute conviction that the symbol would ward off the evil eye. One found the same good luck charms everywhere around town, in doorways, on the backs of trucks and buses, on the windshields of automobiles, and dangling from the rearview mirrors of taxis. I didn't think the superstition had rubbed off on me, though I'd worn one of the engraved amulets around my neck for so long, more as a fashion statement than anything else. I felt almost naked without it. There you go, my khamsa, yeah. The dusky interior of the herbalist shop appeared deserted. Exhilarated curiosity best described my state of mind as I inched carefully toward the back of the surreal establishment, not wanting to entangle myself in the outlandish talismans suspended from fishing lines or disturb the items that jutted precariously from unsound shelving, the sloughed skin of a viper, an ostrich egg in custom leather pouch, or the horn of an antelope. Votive candles cast ghostly shadows on the walls of the healer's low-ceilinged consultation chamber, where the man of mystery was huddled in hushed conversation with a troubled soul. That he understood which wild herb or natural remedy targeted a specific pathology, which incantation accompanied musk-infused charcoal, how to invoke a curse, or how to rescind one was intriguing enough in itself. I hadn't considered the possibility that he also served as de facto psychologist. Medical care in Morocco was cheap by Western standards, but still out of reach for many inhabitants, thereby creating a niche for his man of many talents. I can stop here and I can go to the French, or je m'arrête et je fais le français ou je continue en anglais?
And I want to encourage people to put questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand. We might be able to do it that way too. So
I see 4. Mais tu veux que je continue en français ou je m'arrête pour des questions? How long do we have left? I don't know.
We have about 10 minutes, but it's not that strict. So if you do the French and then we can open it up.
Oui?
Okay.
D'accord. Okay, alors laisse-moi faire ça. Oops, je tourne en français. So this is the same chapter in French. I won't do it that long. Je ne m'attendais pas à une expérience métaphysique le lendemain matin en acceptant une mission que m'avait confiée Boussaïd, de me rendre chez le Fki, herboriste et praticien de médecine traditionnelle. Cet homme régnait aussi sur un commerce qui offrait, parmi d'autres marchandises, une épice appelée Ras al-Hanout, ou tête du magasin, un mélange maison qui pouvait comprendre 30 ingrédients et lui avait porté une certaine notoriété. Qu'il puisse ou non résoudre des maladies connues, depuis les maux de tête aux problèmes d'infertilité, comme le croyaient nombre de Zemouri, j'en doutais. Néanmoins, l'épicière du coin chantait ses louanges. La femme de Bouchaïb en faisait autant, en tant que passionnée de médecine alternative et qui appliquait des cuillères brûlantes entre les doigts de pied de son mari quand il souffrait du pied d'athlète. En Médina, elle avait la réputation de pouvoir calmer un animal enragé. Je n'avais jamais assisté à ces manifestations bizarres, mais j'en avais entendu parler indirectement à travers les récits enjolivés de Bouchaïb. Leila recherchait souvent les conseils des filles, ainsi que ses potions, dans sa lutte permanente pour contrecarrer les effets nocifs des genoux espiègles. Elle n'était pas la seule à mener à bien cette guérilla. Kébira, une femme berbère qui travaillait pour nous quand j'étais enfant, nous fascinait tout en nous remplissant d'épouvante avec ses histoires des al-djinn du Coran, créatures surnaturelles dotées de libre arbitre, nées d'un feu sans fumée qui pouvaient influencer les affaires humaines, en bien ou en mal, comme de maintenir quelqu'un sur le droit chemin ou alors de le pousser au mal. La plus effrayante était la sinistre sorcière de légende, créatrice de chaos spirituel et jeteuse de sorts, Aïcha Kandisha. Parmi de nombreux méfaits, elle pouvait transformer un mari fidèle en coureur de jupons. Enfant, j'avais compris qu'il ne fallait jamais aborder le sujet des pratiques occultes marocaines avec mes parents, car cela ne faisait qu'engendrer leur mécontentement envers Kbira, qui me farcissait la tête de ses absurdités. Ils avaient dû changer d'avis en désespoir de cause en consultant un fqih français à Marrakech pour qu'il vienne à bout des verrues tenaces de mon frère. Le traitement au jujube, eut de l'effet. Un autre jour, j'entendis ma mère conseiller à une amie de planter un rosier blanc dans son jardin pour améliorer ses chances d'accoucher d'un rejeton, un bébé, aux cheveux bouclés. Même à l'âge de 12 ans, j'avais du mal à concilier cette attitude ambivalente envers ce qui dépassait l'entendement scientifique. And I will stop here so that I can answer your questions.
Great. It looks like we have a few in the chat.
D'accord, let's move vers le chat.
The first from Sue says, does Kitty have an idea when she'll be back in Milwaukee?
I don't. I need an excuse. No, I don't have any clue. I don't have really any reason. I love to talk to Youngsu. I don't know. Somebody asked me to come and do a reading, I might. Merci.
Peg wants to know, did you ever win your paperwork battle for ownership of your riad?
Oh, my. Oui, merci. It's the subject of my book. Getting the title of my riad transferred from my father to my name and my brothers took 12 years. And so in the book, I tell about my déboire with the notaries. I mean, it's humorous. I'm not, the notaries and all the crooked lawyers and all the samsar, the real estate agents and all that. It's part of the story of Darzitud. And it hasn't sold yet. So it's up for sale. Yeah, it's a long story.
And to purchase your books, that it's best to contact you, right? I put your website in the chat.
Yeah, it's better to, if you want a signed copy, I have very few copies, hard copies of Mentia and Minarets left. And so it's best to come through me because there's hardly any on Amazon and I'm not dealing with Amazon anymore. And Le Riad au bord de l'Ouest is an ebook, so you can download it also on Amazon as an ebook. But I ship books out all the time. Merci.
Sure. And then Marilyn asks, are there areas of the world that have embraced Moroccan cuisine, or is it most closely linked to the culture of the peoples of Morocco?
Well, yes, to the second part, of course. It's part of the culture, the society, the DNA of Moroccan. I mean, the first thing a Moroccan person will do is invite you to his or her house so you can eat. Moroccans, it's different now. But it used to be you didn't go out to eat Moroccan food in Morocco. You went in if you were lucky enough to be invited. And Moroccans are very, very hospitable. The areas of the world embraced, well, I mean, I think America, I don't know if they've embraced the whole cuisine, but certainly Moroccan spices pop up all over the place, especially this ras el hanout, this top of the shop, a blend of 30 spices in my village. I even saw it in Walmart. So, but you can make your own. I give you recipes in all my books. So I think the flavors of Morocco are influencing other cuisines. The French, the Australians love Moroccan food. And if you go now to top American chef's website, there'll always be something Moroccan lamb, but it's not quite true, but they do use some other spices. So it's more common. However, strangely enough, I don't know of any good Moroccan restaurant on the West Coast. There's one in San Francisco, none in San Diego, none in LA. I don't understand. So there's money to be made with a Moroccan restaurant, but I don't know why they're not opening. Maybe you have something in Milwaukee. I think you have a Middle Eastern restaurant in Milwaukee somewhere.
We have something called Casablanca, which is not Moroccan.
I think it's Palestinian. Oui?
Yeah, the food is not right. There is, Salim wants to ask a question.
Oui? Oui? Bonjour?
Salim,
Bonjour,
Salut. Bonjour.
bonjour Jane, bonjour tout le monde.
Enchanté.
Enchanté. I am Moroccan, by the way, and I was very fascinated by your talk.
Thank you.
So I just actually noticed something in Dar Zitoun, I'm not sure, but I was wondering because I saw it in a film, and the film was made by Abdullah Tayeb, who is an author, like a Moroccan author and filmmaker. And it was filmed in a very similar Riyadh, and I just was wondering if it was the same actual house or not.
Probably was.
Okay.
We've had many movie crew. I didn't meet them. I give permission. And
Okay.
I know there's a movie crew, there's also a Moroccan television crew, and lots of Portuguese, because Azemmour is a Portuguese town, and all the Portuguese authorities come to Dar Zitoun because it's one of the most authentic Riyadh from the Portuguese era. Yeah, you have to send me the link to that movie. They never got in touch with me.
Of course.
Actually, one of them went, I don't know if that's the one, I think it was a TV station. They repainted my Riyadh for the set, and they did not paint it white again, and I was very, very upset. But it was a TV, it was not movie.
No, it was not that one because the Riyadh was white in the movie.
Ouais. Merci.
Yeah.
Shukran.
La shukran ala wajib.
What's next? Tagine, un nom
Any more
féminin. Pardon? Chantal? Oui, un tagine.
Ouais.
Non, peut-être qu'en Belgique, ils disent une tagine, mais c'est un tagine.
Je sais pas, il faudra que je vérifie, mais pour moi, instinctivement, ça devrait être féminin. Mais j'ai appris avec toi que c'est masculin.
C'est masculin, le tagine.
Ouais, c'est la prof en moi qui a besoin de bien vérifier.
Très bien, super. Non, j'ai jamais entendu ça au féminin.
En fait, même en darijan, en arabe, c'est masculin.
Ouais. Oh, share a meal
Any more
in Milwaukee. Yeah. Well, once I came to Milwaukee, where did I cook? Bartolotta's or something? Bartolotta's in the park. And then
like
a long time ago, I gave a cooking class at Coquette. Remember, Kieran? At Coquette in the 3rd Ward with, oh my God, that brilliant chef who cooked for Julia Child. Comment il s'appelle, le chef de Coquette? I have his book. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about.
And Coquette no longer exists. It closed several years ago. So.
Ah bon? Il y avait un autre restaurant close to downtown. D'Amato, Sandy D'Amato. No,
D'Amato, oh yes.
He was the star, and so I cooked with, I cooked at his Coquette restaurant. Yeah, I'll come to cook for sure. A class. I don't do catering anymore. Pardon?
Do you want to talk a little bit about your next project, the next cookbook you're working on, or is that secret?
No, it's not secret. I'm going to keep it sort of vague, but as Anne was kind enough to mention, my mother lived in Milwaukee for 35 years, and then she moved to California to be near us. And my mother was from Alsace. She was French, born in France. And she had relatives in Alsace. And she died 3 years ago, and she left me literally a little suitcase filled with documents, family letters, photos, birth certificates, marriage certificates. And her relatives were Alsatian Jews. And this whole episode that I inherited took place during the German invasion and ended with the Holocaust. So among my mother's documents and all that, there were 100 recipes from my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, dating back to the end of the 1800s and up to 1944. And I couldn't believe it. I had this gift that I was going to donate to a museum. And then I looked at the recipes and I said, I can do something with this. And I have. So my book will be about my Alsatian relatives as an homage to them. I have retested all my great-grandmother's recipes. And believe me, they were chocoholics. I am so sick of chocolate, I can't tell you. There were like 20 cakes and desserts of chocolate. great recipes, classic French with cream, you know, choucroute alsacienne and biker hof and kugelhof, and I'm learning all these words in dialect, and I'm using my great-grandfather's diary in this book. So in a way, it's going to be /memoir/cookbook, and I hope to have it ready by the end of the year. Yeah, it's very, very close to my heart, and I'm thrilled. It's perfect for confinement. So I've been very, very busy during this confinement.
Chantal asks, who eats all the
Wow.
dishes you test in your cookbooks?
Unfortunately, I do. I share when I can, but we're confined, you know? So right now I have in my fridge a choucroute for 8. But I'm going to eat choucroute for the next few days and try and donate some to whoever I can. So yeah, well, I have to taste them to understand. And many of the recipes that I just tested actually were family recipes that my mother and my grandmother prepared. It's just I didn't realize they came from the previous generation. You know, in this gratin dauphinois, and there's, as I mentioned, these pastries, a strange chocolate cake called kaluga, never heard of kaluga, great pudding cake. So this was the challenge. A very, very interesting project for me. Yeah, very, very moving, very moving.
And
yeah.
so are all of you, is it possible to purchase all of your books, and is it the best way to contact you through your website?
Yes and no. I mean, several of my books, like The Vegetarian Table of North Africa, I wrote a book about the Sephardic cuisine of Morocco, The Scent of Orange Blossom, beautiful little book. Those are out of print, but you can get used copies on Amazon. I don't have those anymore. Cooking at the Casbah, which you might see a poster back there, is my Energizer Bunny. It's been in print 20 years, and it's in its 10th or 11th printing. So you can get that on Amazon. But the ones that I have at home, because I'm not sending any more out, is Minty and Minarets, and my cute little edible flowers. I love that little book. Have you seen it? I don't know if you've seen it. Hang on.
I don't know if I've seen it, no.
There you go.
Oh, adorable.
It's a book on edible flowers, all kitchen tested. It's actually the second edition. And I visited all the growers in my area because we're known for our farms and farmers because of our microclimates. And I also wrote a book about California farms, the California Farm Cookbook, which is fascinating. It's a travelogue. I traveled all around the state interviewing farmers. I have to warn, it's 20 years old, it's ugly, but the recipes are not killers. I cook out of the California Farm Cookbook all the time, and that's how I met edible flower growers. And this is the sweetest little gift. I absolutely love this. I had a wonderful publisher for this. And I can send it to you, or you can get that on Amazon. I think it's also downloadable. I think my publisher did an ebook with that.
And Erin will put the Kitty's website on the chat if she hasn't already done that. She may have done it already. And I just to vouch, I do have a couple of cookbooks at home, and I'm not an expert cook, and they're not difficult to follow at all there. And the ingredients are usually pretty easy to find.
Yes, that was the point. You can find the ingredients at your supermarket, except for making your own preserved lemons, which I won't go into today, but don't buy commercial preserved lemons. Go to my, what's that called? YouTube, Kitty Morse preserved lemons, and I'll show you how to make them. Tells you how often I am on YouTube. But it's an essential Moroccan ingredient, and the commercial stuff is 0, so make your own.
And that's one thing I do a lot, and it's very easy to make.
It's very easy to make, yeah. Oh, there's more. What are we doing? Bisque.
I think, I think unless there are other questions, we can let Kitty get back to her day. It's a little bit earlier than here. It's only 4 p.m. in San Diego.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, get a hold of me through my website. I publish a monthly e-newsletter, and if you would like, it's in French and English about my cooking and Morocco and France and all that. It's kind of a fun thing, and you can sign up, send me an email. It's a private newsletter. And Karen, it's so good to see you. And Chantal, how fun. Yeah. And all of you, I really appreciate this.
No, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah,
Now
merci.
we have to go home to much less good food than what we've been talking about, but unfortunately.
Want some sauerkraut?
Sauerkraut is, my mother's also from the East. We love choucroute.
Oh,
So.
la, la. I'm going to sell it out of my back door, I think. No, not really, not really. My new book will be ready, I hope, by the end of the year. I hope by the end of the year, yeah.
Yeah.
Merci, au revoir.
Au revoir, Kitty. It's wonderful to see you.
À bientôt.
À bientôt. Merci beaucoup.
Bis, bis, bis. Et bis. Au
Gros
revoir.
bisous à toi et à Owen.
Merci, au revoir.
Au revoir.